Hello and welcome back to the Jason Sellers Politics Podcast. This is episode 4 of my 5-part pre-convention park board interview series. This is another at-large candidate who I should clarify is not running the DFL endorsement this Saturday. He's a Green Party candidate, Adam Schneider. Another good conversation. He talks about his environmental background. So he also had some issues. I don't know if it was my Wi-Fi, his Wi-Fi. Our Wi-Fi isn't very good, so it could very well be on my end. But he had a couple issues where it cut out, so I might edit that. Another thing I'm gonna give here is that I'm interviewing all 5 of these candidates somewhat back to back, and then I work, pretty much the rest of the week, so I'm not gonna have time to really edit these. So I'm basically just anything I need to edit out. Like there's a moment where somebody cuts out and it's silent for a little bit. I'm just making notes in my head, so if I miss one or two of those, that's why. Sorry about it. Anyways, thanks for watching. Enjoy my interview with Adam Schneider.
Hey, how's it going?
All right, welcome.
Nice to meet you. How's life?
Good. Thanks for taking the time to come on.
No problem.
Yeah, I'll just start with a brief reintroduction of myself. My name's Jason. I'm a lifelong resident of Audubon Park, which is in District 1 on the park board. And I am passionate about local politics. And I'm doing a series on park board candidates. So give yourself an introduction and your relationship with Minneapolis. Did you grow up here? Did you move here?
Yeah, so my name's Adam Schneider, he, him pronouns. I'm originally from Shakopee, Minnesota, so grew right out in the suburbs. But I came, like, obviously we would come to Minneapolis a lot, like, for it was the cool place to be because Shakopee's a suburb. Um, but I started to really get to know Minneapolis when I was 18 and actually met my partner, David. Um, Fell in love with Uptown right away when I was on my way to pick them up for what would be our first date. It wasn't meant to be our first date. It just happened that way. And I've just kind of loved Minneapolis ever since. My partner and I went to college out in Morris, Minnesota, also known as the middle of everywhere. It's neat little branding. But when I graduated, I moved to Minneapolis, and I've been here ever since. That was back in 2021. Um, but I've also been like organizing and doing some work with some local community members for a few years before that as well. Like I've been a member, like a little bit more about me. I've been a member of the Green Party in Minnesota since I was like 17, and with Minneapolis kind of being central to their political efforts, I've been involved in at least on the sidelines of Minneapolis politics for years. Um, but yeah, so that's a little bit about me. Got my degree in political science and environmental studies. So I like to say that I went to school for being a tree hugger, and it's working out actually pretty well. Um, and yeah, now I live in Uptown with my partner. It's great. I love it, and I love the city. And yeah, what more do you want to know about me?
Yeah, I went to elementary school a little bit with Cam Gordon's youngest son, and we would play football, and then they'd host sports days at the park near Cam's house, and so we've gotten to know them pretty well. And for a little while, our political followings and local politics was just whoever Cam was endorsing. So what relevant experience do you bring that will make you the best candidate specifically for the Park and Rec Board position?
Mhm. Yeah, so my focus going into the Park and Recreation Board is making it a vehicle for climate and environmental justice. That's on my website, that's on all of my materials, that's in all of my stump speeches. That's occasionally also on some other candidates' stump speeches, but that's another story for another time. And honestly, that's kind of been my life's work ever since college. I've done everything from organizing neighborhood cleanups to managing environmental and like renewable energy projects to advising the city on environmental policy as a member of the Community Environmental Advisory Commission. So I like to think I am pretty well versed on a lot of tiers of the action of government, and that experience will help me not only advise policy, but also make sure it's done effectively and well in accordance with community. Because that's something that I've been hearing a lot is I've worked with a lot of communities, especially down on the south side of Minneapolis. But it's not only making sure that those communities get access to services programs, but they get access to access to services and programs on their terms, getting especially what they need, and really just communicating with them to make sure that their needs are being met and they're not being told what they need.
So I think the biggest theme in Minneapolis politics for a while, at least in the 2021 election and for a long time, but especially after the murder of George Floyd, has been public safety. As somebody who works in a rec center, I see firsthand how having these safe spaces are good, and there's been a lot of proven evidence that having a place to go, especially for kids and teenagers, is going to prevent crimes down the line because they have communities and they have people and resources they trust. So how would you and the park board take a preventative approach to public safety, and particularly in the quantity and quality of youth programming?
Yeah, so I love what you mentioned about the rec centers because that is really key. Just making sure that the kids have a place to be kids, to
Hmm.
play and learn, not not necessarily in a controlled environment because I don't think anything is super controlled when kids are involved, but in a place where it is safe to explore, being a person and just learning about the world. So one thing that I would love to do is restore the later rec center hours. So I believe that they've been shortened over the past couple of years, and just having them open later will give those kids those safe spaces where they can be themselves and learn and explore. Um, and then yeah, uh, so in terms of preventative measures, one thing that my approach to public safety, forgive me, I was caught up on the rec centers for a second. My approach to community safety is having us move towards a principle called policing by consent. And that's where the power of the police to, patrol our neighborhoods comes from respect rather than from fear. Because for the past few years, I really think that a lot of people have grown afraid from the police, and we've not only seen this from the actions surrounding the murder of George Floyd, but everyday interactions. And actually, one of the things that I hear, like the largest criticism I hear about the park police specifically, is that they are super alien to everyone. Because all they do is sit in their cars and just kind of like not really patrol, just more or less scan, and it's almost creep on everybody on the parkland. So I really want to reorient the way the park police operate, making sure they're out more in community. I would love to explore options to even at some points have them be disarmed. And honestly, I think that approach to public safety is a lot more effective. Like, I think they would be able to build those community relationships and that trust by passing out water on a hot day, or like giving coupons to kids who are like riding bikes with helmets on, and like doing small community stuff like that where they can build that trust and where they just aren't always feared. That said, I'm also in favor of moving away from the police and more towards public safety alternatives. The thing that comes to mind is the park board's street reach team.
Yep.
They are great and amazing, both as community ambassadors, resource connectors. One story I hear about them constantly is how there was once like a rowdy and admittedly intoxicated group of people who would come to the park in Stephen Square and essentially ruin the vibe for everybody. It made the park unsafe. Families did not want to come around as much. People didn't want to walk their dogs. And the street reach team did an amazing job sort of mediating that, de-escalating it, and not only make sure that they left the park, but that their actions were then changed by it was came from like a lot of social interaction with their broader community, but that kind of mediation and de-escalation is exactly what we need in our public safety right now. Just something that really makes sure that the people being policed are human and making sure that our humanity is the first thing considered.
Um, Also regarding public safety, there's been a lot of coverage on unhoused people in the parks, whether it's in an encampment or it's just somebody looking for a place to rest. So this is kind of two questions in one, but would you support more park-sponsored ways for community members to help other community members? I know when I was a staff, there were times where I felt like if something happened, I was not prepared, like when somebody asked for help and I couldn't do it within my job because I'd get in trouble. I didn't feel prepared and I felt bad. So one thing I thought of, when I was working is like, what if we had like a Narcan training, in the parks like every other week or a couple times over the summer. Um, so there's that, and then also on top of that, just what can we do to help the unhoused people in general who are looking for a place, and at the same time balancing the comfort and safety of families who, being concerned is valid when you have your kids and you want to feel safe.
Yeah, no, for sure. I love the idea of having more community resources accessible like that, especially Narcan. When I worked in and around the Phillips neighborhood, Narcan was pretty widely spread, was like pretty widely available to the residents, and they knew how to use it. They like I can't even tell you how many times I've like been was in a coffee shop or like just at my office for work and was like somebody ran out and administered Narcan and saved a life. So having stuff like that and having those trainings and just honestly just having those resources available in the first place is really key to our public safety. On the homelessness front, like the city I'm not has not really addressed that problem in a systematic way. I'm trying to be very diplomatic about this, but to be less diplomatic, the encampment clearings and Fry's kind of almost erasure of our homeless population is utter crap. It's
Mhm.
brushing the issue underneath the rug, and it's almost dehumanizing. So obviously the park board can't solve our housing crisis, but we can help with harm reduction. And part of that is working with the city and the county to um, make sure that these encampments have access to resources, make sure that they do have toiletries, food, water, things that just give them some level of stability in life, and um, obviously also security, which is an issue around some encampments, but making sure that those residents have the stability to then uh, permanent housing or any other kind of program that they need. Because one thing that I've heard from people who work in and around these encampments is that they form these great connections with the residents. They help them get connected to housing, and then the encampment's gone, their person is missing, and they have to start all over. And that's not a sustainable system. And that is not only an unjust system, but like a personally insulting system where you can get so close to a solution, but because the mayor sees you as an inconvenience, then that solution is immediately knocked out of your
Mhm.
hands. So I like when it comes to encampments, I would much rather have a more permanent encampment where we can sort of collaborate around giving them stability and those resources and transitioning them into other programs or more stable housing. Um, we just can't continue bulldozing our way out of this situation. And what was really what was frustrating, I think it was a month or two ago, Mayor Fry said there was like 27 homeless people in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if he's living under a rock or if he just like went outside and like took a run around the block, but the crisis is real and obviously the park board can't solve it, but we can help with that harm reduction and really partner more with the city and the county to make sure that we do have that permanent solution. Admittedly, I'm not a huge fan of allowing encampments on park board property, but
Yeah.
if that is the only solution and that's like the only suitable place for us to start solving this problem, then that's a bullet I'm willing to bite.
Mhm. Yeah, you are not the first candidate so far in this little stretch I'm doing to mention that 27 figure statement that
Mhm.
Fry put out. Um, and I do also have a question about working with other government bodies as well a little later on. And this next question seems to be your cup of tea. What steps will the park board take for climate efficiency and fighting the climate crisis,
Oh,
and doing our part for cleaner air and cleaner water, especially, like 2 days ago when it feels really relevant when it was as
mhm.
smoky as it was.
Yeah, no. The other day I was out door knocking with my friend and fellow candidate who's running in District 3, Kadar, and um, we had to take a few breaks because I was just
Mhm.
coughing up a storm. So the park board can do a lot, especially since it is the largest landowner. It's over 7,000 acres of fields and facilities and lakes. We and like all of those are part of a natural system that we can leverage to reduce our carbon emissions. So, like a lot of the stuff that I have put forward, solar on park facilities, um, like expanding our community gardening program, all of those are very like nuanced things because and like have you really have to look at the co-benefits to see the full picture because like solar on park facilities sounds really nice and a lot of people are hear that and be like, oh yeah, that's really neat. That sounds like, that sounds neat, but like, is that really our biggest issue? But when I actually kind of love that question because then it kind of lets me go into of the co-benefits because like it will in the long run not only like contribute to a greener energy grid, it will contribute to a more resilient grid. It will contribute to um, saving money down the line, especially if the state keeps those nice public solar tax credits going around. Um, it and then sort of the same with community gardens because like yes, gardens are cute, they're fun, but they are vital for a more resilient and local food system. And those are things that I definitely want to introduce, especially in the green zones and around the cultural districts, because those are the neighborhoods that often don't have grocery stores. They're facing the food apartheid. So it's these climate solutions, but also emphasizing all of the ways that they make life better, that they help us fill inequities. Um, and in addition to those two things that are kind of like my main things, solar and community gardens, partly because I work a little bit with solar and I manage community gardens, so it's like what I know best. I'm also all in favor of expanding our greenway system,
Mhm.
especially the north side and south side greenways, connecting the Great Northern Greenway, just to make sure that biking is a more accessible alternative for working class people. Because like I get it, like a car is really convenient, but if we have what is more or less a bike highway across the city, maybe a bike will be just as convenient. And it's making sure people have those opportunities to make that change themselves. Not to mention just it's a great way to lower our transit emissions, which are I do believe some of our highest sources of carbon emissions. So it's something we definitely need to tackle.
Yeah, when you talk about, people saying, is this really the biggest issue? I think, public health affects everything, and
Mhm.
even in terms of public safety, if people are healthier, they'll be able to work more, they'll have higher income and
Mhm.
just be in a better state, both mentally and physically. And I think that lowers crime, preventative approach.
Yeah,
And then you already
exactly.
started.
It's like making sure people have resources
Mhm.
helps everything down the line. It's like making sure people have a roof over their head, clothes on their back, and food on the table solves so many issues down the line. It's just hard to see the benefits of that investment today because it's preventing harms in the future. But it's just partly seeing each other as humans and that we do need these things. But also just knowing that if we don't take these actions, then someone is going to be worse off.
And you already started answering this in the last question, but what can the park board do to help and support pedestrian and transit safety on parkways and other park-owned properties? And would you support part-time and or full-time parkway closures to vehicles?
Mhm. So for the parkways, I would be in favor of um, occasional closures. I often go around the parkways myself, and for some housing, it's their only access,
Yeah.
which for me is a little bit of a flawed design, but it's not like we can pick up the building and shuffle things around now. So I'd be in favor of doing something like an open parkways, like the way we do open streets. But for permanently, unfortunately, no, and that goes against my greener senses, and that like I kind of have to put my tree hugger to the side, and be like, just realistically, like we can't close our parkways all the time. But I think not only can we do it some of the time, but we can use that to create better community connections. And I've talked to like a lot of people have asked me about the parkways and shutting them off, and I'm like I would love to if it was a more if it weren't wouldn't forgive me disadvantage so many people.
Yeah.
But and they're like, okay. And I'm like, but like I would love to move towards that at some point. And they're like, okay, me too. How about bike lanes? How about better pedestrian infrastructure? There are a lot of small things that we can do to make the parkways a lot more friendly to pedestrians because like I drive on them. I go the speed limit. I like to think I look out for people, haven't hit anybody, but I also see people using it as a racetrack.
Yep.
So, like, if we can introduce those traffic calming features that our city council loves to talk about, adding bike lanes, which city council candidates love to talk about, usually disparagingly. Um, like, I think that can help us move towards a more pedestrian, honestly human friendly parkway without having people who rely on the parkway as their main thoroughfare having them to be so disadvantaged.
I used these two examples when I was talking to Commissioner Olson about how it is a necessity for some people, and we live in Audubon Park. My grandpa just until recently had a wood shop west of University, so you have to take Sainsbury Park when you get there. If
Mm-hmm.
that's closed, you'd have to go down to Lowry or 37th, which are always being worked on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and in terms of biking, there is a bike path right next to it, bike trail. It's a very hilly area.
Mm-hmm.
So someone like me who wishes I wasn't as reliant as a car as I am and I'm not a very experienced biker do have trouble getting up it. The more experienced bikers are a little better at it. And then also in the winter time, we don't have winter bikes either.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then the speeding. And there's the St. Anthony Dog Park is on that off the parkway, and there's a stop for pedestrians crosswalk that I see a lot of cars pass right through when we're waiting. And I know Waterworks, just on the other side of the river, has one of those elevated crosswalks and it has the flashing lights when there's pedestrians. So if we could just improve those, is something that I've also mentioned back and forth with other candidates as well. Last year, our park employees represented by LIUNA's 363 went on strike. So what priorities would you have for park employees and how would you fight to achieve them?
Yeah, so just starting off last year's strike, I joined them on the picket line a couple of times. I joined them on their March on the Park Board, which I believe was around July 20th. Um, Admittedly, I did have to leave early to make it home for dinner with the in-laws, but if going home for dinner is my biggest anti-union action, I think I'm doing pretty good. Um, no, but over the past year, I have had the chance to talk to a lot of park board workers, and the big test for whether or not the park board has really changed will come in 2027. But in the meantime, there are a lot of actions the park board can and really should take to um, help secure these workers a safer workplace. Um, the very first worker I talked to, who was a LIUNA member, um, helps take care of one of the parks in North Minneapolis, and he is out here spraying herbicides and pesticides, which not a huge fan of, but I'm going to put that argument aside. And he's like, yeah, none of us have masks to wear. None of us have any sort of like PPE or any sort of like protective material. And I'm like, wow, you really should. And same with like elect with diesel powered leaf blowers and other materials. Like those are fumes that also get in your face. So I would love to make these small but really important investments in safety gear for park board employees and just make sure that their job isn't killing them at the end of the day. And then another park worker who I had coffee with about a week or two ago, she was telling me how she at the forestry department was putting on a event like a family and kids event, sort of like let the kids see how tall the trees are and like all the work that they do. Um, and the lift that she was on had a weight limit of about 400 pounds. Um, she's like an average sized adult, so anywhere between like 150 to 200 pounds. But then she was asked to bring on a kid and then and then occasionally another kid and their parent. And then and she went to her supervisor being like, we are going past the weight limit. This is unsafe. This opens up to us to legal liability and lawsuits. I'm not doing it. And luckily, she was able to kind of shut that portion down. Well, it's not great that that it eventually shut down, but she called in a complaint, and the park board wasn't willing to mediate on that issue or like kind of give it like some sort of like halfway measure where it's like one or two kids at a time. Um, so eventually the event was shut down, and I don't know. There's just kind of like this added there seems to be this attitude among like upper management at the park board that nothing that matters on the ground, nothing on the ground matters. Like the park workers are just day laborers. They don't have the same credibility or importance as us in the higher offices. And I do some of that on the ground work in my day job. And I'm sorry, that's how things get done. So it's also bringing up that attitude of like, we actually need to appreciate the people who make one of the best park systems in the nation. Um, but yeah, no, like those are a lot of small things. Like equipment and procedure that we can do over the next couple of years. But when the LIUNA contract is up for renegotiation in 2027, that's going to really tell us if the park board has changed for the better. And I hope, especially with this election, it has, and that me and other pro-labor candidates will get elected because during the 2024 strike, the superintendent crossed a lot of lines, including some lines that ended up in front of mediation and arbitration. So we really need our park commissioners to, when we go into the renegotiation in around 2027, that we kind of need to be overseeing the superintendent a lot more closely, that we actually do need to read the contracts that are being proposed, which many of our park commissioners didn't. We can't just defer to the superintendent and upper management. We need to be actively involved, talking to the workers, and also talking with park board side to help mediate things. But we need to make sure that everyone's going in good faith, because I think that's where a lot of stuff went wrong in the 2024 negotiations. Um, the park board thought we'll give them their benefits and compensation, sure, but then we'll take away all of these organizing abilities. And they were like, they'll definitely agree to that. They obviously didn't agree to that, and they should have agreed to that. And I don't know. I don't know if it was hubris or some sort of ideological maliciousness that caused it, but we can't have that happen again in 2027. We need park commissioners who are actually going to listen to and stand by our park workers. Because not only are they the ones that make things happen, once again, this is one of the best park systems in the nation. It has issues, and I talked about those issues a lot, but it is one of the best in the nation. And we need to appreciate and treat our park workers who make it like they are the ones who make it. I hope that was a long-winded enough answer. I hope that answered the full question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I got 8 minutes left on this Zoom, and so what I've been doing is combining these next two questions. So part of why I do this, the podcast and the social media in general, is to spread awareness. You know, a lot of people, especially my age, don't know a lot about local politics, what the park board does, or even what the city council does. So how has your campaign gone about community outreach and input? How will you continue that in the office if you're elected? And then how will you advocate for park needs and partnerships with other government bodies, such as the state legislature, city council, Met Council? I know you already talked about the mayor's office too.
Community engagement is really important. We're running a fully grassroots campaign, an independent grassroots campaign at that. So we have to have our roots in community, otherwise this campaign is going to wither away. And luckily, we've been able to be pretty strong so far. The best ways I've been able to get feedback about the parks is simply asking people about them. I'm surprised I'm not seeing more park board candidates door knocking and engaging with their everyday neighbors and be like, hey, what do you want to see? But that's ultimately what you have to do at the end of the day. And it's just kind of this form of deep canvassing, because obviously at the end you hope to earn their vote. But I always preface this with, I just want to learn from you first and foremost. I would love your vote, but I know I'm not entitled to it. So I hope whatever feedback you can give me will result in a policy or a project or some budget line item that you like. Um, but at the end of the day, this is meant to serve you, and I really want to try to keep that up if elected. I do want to have, like, I don't know, there are 6 park districts, so I was thinking like every year, every other month, I go to a different district. Me and that district commissioner has a sort of meet and greet or like roundtable discussion about
Mhm.
just like what they want to see in that area. I'm also a huge lover of the neighborhood organizations here in Minneapolis. I also work with one, so admittedly a little biased. But like those are great sources of knowledge, and with the neighborhood organizations, the their board members that I have been able to connect with, like they have a huge block of information that is honestly mind blowing. So there are a lot of resources, and so long as I've just learned that so long as you're open to community, community will be open to you. And I've always had this, like a lot of my work has been around public service and community service. Like at the end of the day, I'm here to work for you, the regular people, the community. So I serve at your pleasure, but that also means you need to tell me. And a lot of people are like, okay, I'll tell you. And I love having that open dialogue like that. Even if it does get heated, even if it does get spicy, like so long as we're honest and just frank with one another, I think a lot of progress can be made and a lot of compromise and progress can be made. Yeah. And then working with like working with other government bodies is super important. And oh my God, we have 4.5 minutes. I especially want to work with, and like part of this is working as equals on a lot of projects. Like I would love to work more with the city of Minneapolis um, around urban agriculture and culture and arts, and do some pretty big projects like a community theater or like an urban agriculture center. Same with the school board. One of the things that Adriana Cerrillo, who's the director for District 4 on this Minneapolis School Board, said to me is like, if you get elected, we need to be meeting more than once or twice a year. And I'm like, okay, done. Especially because they serve the same constituency, which is our youth, and like obviously the greater population. But these are the two governmental bodies that interact with Minneapolis's youth the most, and collaborating is not only vital for them but for our entire future. And I would love to set up a system where we can help the public schools increase enrollment by giving public school students free access to park programming. I would love to also help the school board maintain and improve a lot of its assets, like Cooper Playground in Southeast Minneapolis, that was under threat of being torn out. And yeah, and when it comes to the federal and state governments, I'm not super hopeful from the federal government, if I'm being honest. I would love to work with Ilhan Omar and our senators to frame park projects in a way that will appeal to federal funders, where it's like, yes, this park lighting project will increase public safety. It will do all of these things, increase accessibility, all of these things that we all agree on. But then, of course, also have all of the other co-benefits. And then with the state legislature, we need to have a serious sit down with them because there are some regional trails and parks that they have not been holding up their end of the bargain for, and those line items have fallen on the park board. And with the financial crunch we're in right now, the state has a lot more flexibility than we do, and I would love to have them be a more equal partner in maintaining those, shall we say.
Yeah, so real quick, let's just get your farewells, like your why you're running, what are your goals, why people should vote for you, your little elevator pitch, if you will.
Yeah, I'm running mainly around climate and environmental justice, but also bringing focus back to our neighborhoods, making sure that the park board is focused on the parks and serving our everyday residents. And even though I have not been elected before, I do have a track record that you can look to that I have served community and served them well. I have offered them results. I have delivered materially for a lot of everyday Minneapolis citizens, even if I'm not elected, but I also want to have that chance to be elected and do even more. At the end of the day, I serve at the pleasure of Minneapolis, no one else. And yeah, that's what I have to offer.
All right, well, yeah, thank you so much for your time, and thanks for coming on.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, looking forward continuing our conversation, start the campaign.
Absolutely. Sounds great.
All
Yeah.
right. So that was Park Board at Large candidate Adam Schneider. Um, Again, thank you so much for watching and listening. I'll say it again. If you're watching us on YouTube, this is also available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you're watching or listening to this on one of those or other podcast platforms, there's also available a video version on YouTube. Jason Sellers Politics is the channel. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at Jason Sellers MN, at Instagram at MPLSJason, and on Blue Sky at Jason Sell. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Bye.